Good morning and welcome back to Lovebabz, Lovetalk. I'm Babz Rawls-Ivy. Woo! I'm delighted because I've got my good friend Enroue here. He's going to get our Orishas lined up.
Good morning,
How
Babs.
are you, friend?
I'm so good. It's funny, I get just hearing your intro, that music, just immediately just starts getting me happy. It's really wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah,
How
just
are
gotta
you? Happy New
move and
Year. Yeah, gotta
yeah,
move. It's cold. It's cold. I see you have a scarf on. It's still cold.
it is cold. Yes, it's winter,
I
like
know it is. It is.
mid-January.
I know. We've been enjoying this Virginia winter for so long that when Connecticut winter shows up, we're all shocked.
Right. What is
Like, what is
this?
this?
No.
Oh,
Yeah. All right.
oh.
We'll do a little honoring and welcoming our ancestors and our relationship with our ancestors.
Okay.
And right, so this chant is a Yoruba chant. Um, and so, being a Yoruba priest that I am, I like it and use it often in my practice. And it's a chant to our ancestors saying that we honor them and we thank them for the ashe that they've left for us. And ashe is many meanings. It means let it be so, like may this thing manifest from like a idea to reality. It's also like the authority to do something or kind of the qualities and essence of something and like how it is in the world. So we give thanks to our ancestors for that ashe that they've left for us, right? This lineage, these blessings of this lineage that they've left for us. And that ashe that they've left for us, we're using it today. So we thank them for what they're leaving, but also we're claiming and acknowledging our role in picking that up and accessing it and continue to manifest it to ourselves and to others. So that's this chant. And Baba is like the male lineage, Ye Ye is the female lineage, and Egun are like all of our ancestors. So you'll hear those in this chant as well. Ibaba tó fún wa ṣe o. Ibaba tó fún wa ṣe. Ibaba tó fún wa ṣe o. Ibaba tó fún wa ṣe. Àṣetè fún wa là ń lò yìí o. Ibaba tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà yeye tó fún wa ṣe o. Ìbà yeye tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà yeye tó fún wa ṣe o. Ìbà yeye tó fún wa ṣe. Àṣetè fún wa là ń lò yìí o. Ìbà yeye tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe o. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe o. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Àṣetè fún wa là ń lò yìí o. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Ìbà egungun tó fún wa ṣe. Ashe.
Ashe, amen.
Ashe. Amen. Ashe. Yes, yes, yes.
So, what is on your heart and mind today?
Peace.
Oh,
That is beautiful. So,
okay. Okay.
I think it's powerful that like such a word elicits such complexity, right?
I
Like, oh,
know. Isn't it
where's this gonna
crazy?
go? Ah, mm, all right, let's get ready. What? So even just that, right? Even if we, so I know so I was raised by revolutionaries and activists. That's who my parents are and who they were, and very active. I was born in '68, and it's there's an ease in which I can look at like systems of things. Oh, systems of oppression, systems of liberation. These are the dynamics, race and class and justice things and issues. And I also recognize that there's a way that um, just that framework by itself did not necessarily mean peace. Right?
Mm.
And so what I'm continuing to look at, even in the context of still doing right liberation work, right, want us all to be free. There's systems in place that are preventing that, right? So there's changes that need to happen. But I think it's easier to look at like peace and kind of jump to the big ends of like, well, we need justice or we need these other things first, or like the big systems things. And it's easy to forget the actually more complex ways about what it means for us internally and in our most intimate relationships. And so can we cultivate that kind of peace, right? Being loving and compassionate to ourselves, being I think particularly in the spirit of just having MLK Day, can we be nonviolent to ourselves, right? And then can we enact that and be open to that to the people closest to us? Right? What does that peace mean? How is it acted, right? This ashe that comes down, right? Our ancestors who've been through a lot of not peace, right? Would certainly wish for us to be at peace. Just like when we care for young people, we want them to like have a peaceful life, right? And so our ancestors also want that of us. So can we also pick that up as some of what they're leaving for us? Can we see? Can we have courage to be that, to enact that, to feel that, to live that, even as circumstances? Right?
Mm.
But it's easy to just say, well, they don't reflect it back to me, so why should I do it to them? And, and these big things. And we forget even the closest part, like ourselves, and then moving out from there. Okay, so this person, because usually we experience in our lives most directly kind of systems, these like oppressions, right? This like no or a dehumanization through people, right? And can we hold onto ourselves and the values of what this means inside, even as we interact with these people? We don't necessarily interact in big ways to these big systems in the same way. And many of them are operating kind of, even as we don't see them or interact with them directly. But in our relationship with our partners, our children, our parents, right, our coworkers, our neighbors, can we hold some peace there?
Right.
Right? Can we start there? And that's not easy, right? But I think that is so counter to how we're raised, right? In this culture, you got to be ready to fight. And so, particularly as someone who's like a male, right? I'm trained in this culture to even to protect people I love, to be ready to wield violence. Right? And so my thinking, if there's a conflict, is to be ready for that, to prepare for that, to anticipate that. Instead of, oh, if I'm trying to cultivate peace, if I'm trying to be that, even in myself, if there's a conflict, can I hold that as an option? Oh, what would it mean to address this thing, whatever it is, from a place of me being peaceful?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean being weak or capitulating just to whatever, but like being peaceful. So that I've been thinking a lot about and feel more into that than, you know, I think I used to. Um, Not that I was trying to be violent, but there was, I read something years ago. It was a person talking about nonviolence, and they were talking about being in a conversation with somebody else. So like, yes, I believe in nonviolence, and so the person keeps throwing up examples. Well, what if someone's running at you, you know, ready to hit you, right? And he would give a response. Well, what if? And the what ifs kept getting more and more extreme, right? Because the desire was to like win the argument. Like, I think nonviolence is ridiculous, and so there's always going to be a point where you're going to be violent. So this person said something, and the person who was saying that they were trying to be nonviolent said, you know, if that happened, I would lunge at the person and like try to hurt them or try to kill them. And the person was like, see, I told you. But they said, but I would hope and pray that my brothers and sisters would hold me back. And when I read that, it really changed how I thought even about nonviolence. Because we think of it, all these things in terms of like what you as an individual will do or what your capacity is. Well, violence is a part of human nature and all these things. Well, sure. And if we're in community with people who are also helping us, who are not lost in the thing, they can hold us. They can both protect us and the other person from doing
See,
that.
that's the antithesis of gang mentality.
It's a different gang mentality. It's like it's a gang of like love and compassion, which, you know, as these words come out of my mouth, I'm like, this sounds so like unreal and like floofy. Like, it's the gang of love. We just need to bring all the love, and that's the
I mean,
answer.
you know what,
But there's a
Enroue,
depth.
I like what you're saying, but I also, I mean, I can embrace what you're saying, but I also know if I have to fight, I will. That's it. Like, I don't see it as a, if I have to fight, then I'm giving up nonviolence. I don't
So
hold
I
that.
think, yeah, I think we can look at and tease apart like a situation and what fighting means.
Right. Because if
Because we
somebody
have this
coming at
language of
me, I'm
fighting.
swinging back, but I'm not going to be swinging. Like, I don't walk into spaces looking for a fight or looking to be violent. But if violence darkens my door, I, I, listen.
Mhm. No, no, I get it. I get it. And again, this isn't like this isn't like some absolute thing. And
Right.
I also think that like if we were to tease apart a scenario, right? So it's rare to walk into a situation, someone takes a swing at us. Like, that's a strange thing to happen. And like, you know, not every place is safe, right? So what am I walking into, right? So we'll say that that situation is not what we're talking about. And so if there's a situation, what is that escalation that goes from nothing happening to someone taking a swing at me, right? And so what are the step-by-step processes of how we're interacting that's leading to that, right? And not that you have to it's not about taking care of everybody else. Oh, I got to make sure I'm taking care of this other person who just doesn't see me as a human being. But there's also looking at the situation of like, well, what part am I playing that I'm also on this track where like, you know, if I'm ready to fight, I immediately don't see any other option. And so it's not that it doesn't happen, but I think that there's a place of really looking at what am I already going in wielding in a situation, and is are there other ways to go into situations and interact with people and
Yeah.
be with people, and also again not being this piece around like being with others, right? Having support with other people who can also help to mitigate a situation so that it doesn't erupt in that. Um,
You make me think about there used to be a show on when I was a kid with David Carradine.
mhm.
I don't know if you remember David Carradine, but he was an Asian or half Asian.
Kung Fu. You're talking about Kung
Kung
Fu?
Fu. And
I'm with you.
he would find himself in a situation that he'd have to remember what his Sensei taught him growing up, and he
Right.
remembered. And it was a blind guy who was teaching him how to defend himself.
Right.
But
Right.
the basis of it was always don't start nothing, won't be nothing.
Right.
Like walk the world peacefully, but be ready. But
Yes.
not be ready like you're not at ease. So you just made me think about that because that show was way ahead of its time in terms of
Yeah. 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 There's some interesting backstories with that. So that show was initially so David Carradine as an actor is white, and that show was initially developed and created by Bruce Lee.
I thought
And
David Carradine was mixed. He was biracial. He was Asian and white.
the character is, I don't think he is, but this point is that it was actually Bruce Lee's idea, and they
Yeah,
refused to cast him in that role because he looked too Asian.
yeah.
Right. So they're like, oh, we'll change this up a little bit and we'll have this, white presenting person or white perceived person. And, um, this other thing, because for a while I was looking at martial arts and this piece around like, yeah, I'm not trying to go and start a thing, but how can I be safe, right? And I was Aikido is this form that is really about the energy of the attacker coming at you and you transforming it and moving it away from you so you're safe, but also it's not simply about then hurting the attacker, right? It's disabling them, right?
Hmm.
Immobilizing, preventing them from hurting you, but it's also caring for them. That's the kind of overarching philosophy of it. And I remember reading an article in a magazine, and there was this guy was talking about like he was a like nth whatever degree, black belt in Aikido, and he was on this subway car, and there was a pretty large man who was very drunk, who was like bothering people, and it kept kind of escalating and escalating, and you could see he was about to like get into a fight with kind of anybody, and this guy who was like this, black belt in Aikido was like, okay, I'm ready. Like this is like what it's all come to. How I'm gonna like to protect the people here from this guy, but I'm also gonna like not do the thing so he's hurt. I'm like, and so he kind of like, it's like fortifying himself to get ready. So the next he kind of acts in some way he's gonna respond. And just in that moment, he said this very small, like Asian man, he didn't know his ethnicity, kind of like got up and walked over to the man and like sat down next to him and started talking. He was like, oh, and starts talking to him and commiserating about like, oh, life is hard and what's going on and you're drunk and da, da. And like the guy just starts at first is like taken aback, but then starts talking to him, and then within like a minute, the drunk guy's like leaning on this smaller man, crying, and um, totally transformed the situation, right?
Uh-huh.
And this guy was like, I was so ready to use these like fighting skills that I couldn't see anything else. And
Wow.
here this other thing happened that completely transformed the situation, humanized the person, right? This person who was drunk and being violent and aggressive, and other people were safe, right? And that's one story. Another story was like in my experience also on a train. And I was with Tegan, my wife, and these two people, these two women were like across the aisle from each other, going like, "Who do you think you are?" Da, da, da. And it was like escalating, right? Don't look at me, right? So they're on the train, they were kind of facing each other in their seats, and it was just this tension was escalating, and we were sitting there. I was like, "Oh, this is bad. This is like not gonna go well." And I was like, "I'm not like intervening. Like I'm not gonna say a thing." I was like, I'm like, "How long are we on this train for?" And what was powerful is Tegan was like, let's get up and stand between them. I was like, what? She was like, listen, we're just gonna block the view. I was like, okay. And we got up. This is in the middle of a stop, right? There's no reason to get up. We just got up and held the pole and stood between them and blocked their line of sight from each other. And within like 15 seconds, they stopped talking to each other and like it ended. And like a stop or two later, like one of them got off and like that was the end of it. And what these things teach me is that, you know, I am my thinking can be so far from considering really any other option besides some that it's going to be some kind of physicality, like some physical intervention is needed. Not like physical get between people, but like physical, like, oh, gonna have to put hands on somebody or protect a person or whatever. And that there are ways to resolve conflicts that could be very violent in ways that like address, honor people, give people space to not keep amping up their story and their ego, right? And the threat
Mm-hmm.
for something else to happen. And I think that that's this piece around peace that we are so far from, that I think is really valuable to like what is this in me that I'm like arguing and fighting in the story, and what is between even the people who are closest to me, not even getting into like you're saying, the person who's gonna just like, I'm gonna fight, I don't know them, and they're ready to throw a fist at me. Like even before we get to that point, or before we get to like national and international issues of violence and war and horrors and things like that, even before there, can we at least get to like ourselves and our lives to even develop a notion of that there may be a different way that we
Mm.
can live, which has, you know, exponential benefit of our health and well-being and love and care and wellness.
Mm. Man, I wish there was a way that we could just have peace classes.
Right, right. That's right.
Because I
But we
don't
have
think
all these
people
other
consider that.
classes.
I mean, we have other classes, but I don't think people, I mean, I think we used to call them conflict resolution, but before conflict resolution, I think people have to show up to things already peaceful with themselves. Do you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I don't think people are peaceful. When I see people's interactions
right.
out there in the streets, when I see people and they're so angry, and I'm like, I'm always
Yeah,
thinking, what the hell is driving that level of anger? Like, why are people so angry, right? Like, what is happening? Because sometimes the anger doesn't match the situation. I'm like,
right, right,
this seems a little over the top for somebody, accidentally bumping into you or
right.
cutting you in a
All this stirring
line
up.
or, you
Yeah,
know, like why is this so amped up so high? And I think people have a lot of unresolved anger that's deep, that's layered, that wasn't dealt with. And so it just comes across the ages with them. You know what I mean? Like,
I completely agree with you. And I would say that it's not just unresolved anger, because anger is actually an acceptable expression of something in our culture. Like, right, you're seeing, like, I'm seeing people on the street, they're like, oh, angry, and it's all amped up, right? So it's actually acceptable to like express and demonstrate that anger. It's not so acceptable to express and demonstrate heartbreak, confusion, right? Um, Sadness, grief, fear,
mm,
right? You don't see people just in the streets in the same way being like, oh, I'm just really heartbroken, right? People start like when they see it, they're like, I don't know what to do. Like pat someone, just avoid them, right? But anger, people know what to do, right? Move towards, move away, like something. And I think that so because of that, so much of those feelings quickly turn into anger. Oh, you made me, right? You disrespected me, or disrespect is right. That's a different thing than the anger, right? But boom, people get angry about it. You broke my heart, right? You left, loss, fear. How dare you? The anger shows up, right?
hmm
And so I think that that's this piece of, can we So we can't cultivate peace if internally there's all this distraughtness, right? Or despair, or hopelessness, or fear, or confusion, right? And so, can we give ourselves that? Can we create circumstances to nourish those parts of ourselves so that when the the bump happens on the street, it's not such a challenge to our very nature because we
Right.
got a little bit more capacity. Because oh, I didn't feel good. Like, oh, you doing it on purpose? Like, what's there? But I'm not like, whoa, what? How dare you? You challenged, and now I gotta explode and rain down all the terror and anger on you, right? Because there's been no other place for it. And that happens, right? Yes, it can happen kind of out there in the world, but that also happens inside, right? Self hatred, ways that we don't take care of ourselves, critical of ourselves, our bodies, our emotions. Those closest to us, right? We don't have capacity, so someone does a little thing and they're tired and they're annoying. It's like, why did it? The yelling, right? Uh, the intimate partner abuse, right? Hitting that happens to children, right? All kind of in the name of without any kind of reflection on wow, I'm being violent towards these people closest to me. Is that how I think things should be? Right? And I think that that's this even as we look at this opening chant around like this ashe that they've left for us, this possibility they've left for us, how, there's love, there's care. Can we pick that up? It's so easy to pick up the passed down heartbreak, rage, despair, trauma, right? But those need our attention and courage to undo in ourselves. And then with others it becomes easier, right? Oh, I can trust this person to be with me. If I'm triggered and I kind of lose my mind, here's someone who's gonna be like, hey, you're about to do this thing, which I know you really don't want to do because you're feeling a certain way. Let's help deal with that. And then you kind of come back to yourself, oh yeah, I didn't really want to do that. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
where that right? As human beings, we all have limits, but we're actually not alone in this world. So can we help each other when we're past our limit to be held and it's okay, I got you. It's okay. We'll just wait this out. And then it's like, oh, right, I was about to, you know, I don't even know what, lose it on someone else or even on myself, right? These are the kind of accountability buddies, even in terms of our health, right? Oh, I'm trying to change how I'm eating, being healthy. Um, it's such a habit to when I'm stressed, right? Stress eating. Oh, and you got someone who's like, oh, you're stressed. Let's deal with the stress so it doesn't turn into eating. Because you don't want the eating part, but actually the stress is also there. So just hold on. What are you doing to help with that stress? Right? That's that can lead to something different.
Mm-hmm.
And we as people in this culture and as a people who've also experienced so much violence from a culture, we don't have a lot of experience in that. We don't have a lot of practice in that. And I think that that's part of the, not as as a strategy. There's this piece around nonviolence and around peace that's actually about that, right? It's about how we live, not just is this a strategy for social change, right? Challenging systems of oppression, but can we explore that for our lives, for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our family, for our friends, from our extended communities, extended families? Can that impact and be impacted? And then we then address these systems in a very different way, right? In a way that's I can actually be creative in my thinking. Because if we're triggered, if our anger's triggered, we're not creative in our thinking. We got a whole
Yeah.
lot of anger energy, but we are not creative at all. We're just what's the thing that can just get ejected at the thing that's a threat? That's kind of it. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
a
the
good
creative
message.
thing.
That feels like an MLK message. That feels like the right sort of MLK message, after coming off of the MLK celebration or
Yeah.
remembrance or whatever it is people do. It feels like the right sort of message, in this moment.
I think so. I mean, I think it is amplified, right? Because of this time, this, day of celebration, which, people, we can get into a conversation about what's being celebrated and how so much of even this notion of like nonviolence, there's still a radical piece around like, oh, that means really undoing systems of oppression, right? Undoing poverty. Poverty is systems that we have that create poverty. That's violence,
Yeah.
right? Oh, so that means, what would it mean to undo that and to deal with people differently? Kind of machinations of war. Um, who gets hired, who doesn't, what gets said, what doesn't, what gets on the news, who's running for office, who's not, right? These things perpetuate and echo and foster violence. So what would it really mean to be in the world differently and create different nourishing institutions, policies, practices, ways of being?
Hmm.
Say, let's try it bit by bit.
This was a good conversation on peace.
See?
I'm
Not
glad we
so,
had it.
you were ready
I'm
for
like,
the,
oh,
where's it going?
like, oh no, not peace.
Not, it's not really a heavy load. It's not easy, but it's not really a heavy load.
Right. No, that was a good walk into it, which I liked very much.
Thank
Uh, and a good meditation and something to take into discernment. I like that.
you. Yeah.
So yeah, just the right message for just this right moment.
Thank you, Babz.
Thank you. Ashe. Amen.
I say.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, may
I
we
won't
all like have a little bit more peace in starting here in our hearts, right? Towards ourselves, in our lives, towards those closest to us. And let's see what we can bring it into the work, see how it impacts other things, right?
I love
We
it.
can all do something.
Thank you so much. I'll see you late February because I'll be away for a good while.
Woohoo! Yes. That sounds so good. I'm so happy
I
for you.
know, me too. Thank you very much. We'll see how it goes.
All right, Babs. Take
Thank you
care.
so much. Say hi
Bye
to
bye.
everybody at your house.
I will. Stay
All
well.
right. Thank you, Enroue. All right, Happy Dros. We back tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday, the weekend. And I believe I have a guest. I have Nancy Allisberg, who's going to talk about assisted suicide. And so that should be a Friday conversation. So I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one.